Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about identification, authentication, and authorization. Now, why we're talking about this? This is one of the binding principles of identity and access management. So if you want to know more about identity and access management, this concept is must for you. Now, let's gonna understand quickly in a real-time scenario what and how identification or authentication authorization is actually used. Think about you are employed in a corporate company. Now you've been asked to come back to office, and the when you are on the first day of the office, you would have been given, or your ID card. So using the ID card, you want to come into your office. So when you do so, you firstly prove your identity, saying that I work for this company by having the correct access card of your company, which has your company name, which you're working for, and your photo identity, saying that this is how I look like. And you have your employee identification number, which is a unique number, which is unique for your company. And that number would be on record and it will justify that you are their employee. So, this kind of identification document you're going to have when you are working for such company. So this is the first thing you're gonna show to anyone who asks whether you are working for this company or if you wanna enter your company. Now, when you want to enter your company, the second phase of this comes, which is authentication. Now, just by having identity card, it doesn't mean that you will be able to enter. The identity card will have some kind of a access card related permission. So it would be a card which can identify it by an electronic device. So when you scan that card on the electronic device, it will let you, the gates would open or some kind of authentication will be there to enter into the premises. Firstly, it proves that your face is there, which is your identity, and the access is still valid, which means that you are getting authorization to enter into the premises. And the third thing is that about the, I'm sorry, you are getting authentication that you can enter into the premises. The third thing we're going to talk about is authorization. Now, authorization, a lot of people get confused with authentication. I do sometimes get confused with the word, but authorization is completely different. Authorization means that you have authentication to enter into the premises, but where are you going to sit? So if you're working for a company like corporate companies, they may be in a building where it may have a lot of floors, and within a lot of floors, it may have a lot of rooms called data centers, or it could be your offshore, workplaces. It could be any kind of workplaces. So what normally would be done is like you may have access to certain number of floors or certain number of doors inside those floors. So likewise, you need to go on and ask your lead or someone who is responsible for you to to allocate your desk or where your desk is assigned. So that is kind of authorization where you have authentication to enter the building, but authorization is like which floor and which team you're going to sit as part of. So that tells you your authority on the company. If you are a CEO of the company, then obviously you will have access to every door because the company is something which you are taking care of, right? So that makes the CEO as like the administrator user. So where in which currently we are logging in as the root. So which means that I'm the CEO of my account, which I have created on AWS. But going further down the line, you will be creating employees for your uh, actual organization, which is basically your account. And then when you create an organization, you can also add multiple accounts and create small root users for each of this account, and you will be administrating through the organization, which we will talk later in detail. So what this means is that you're going to identify, you're going to authenticate, and you're going to authorize in terms of a corporate company situation. Now, compare that with what you can actually do in terms of IAM, identity and access management. Now, you need to have a user, which basically the process of claiming an identity, and the purpose is to declare who you are or the entity is. And example is like entering a username and presenting an ID card. So this claims that this is your identity. The next one is your password. Password is it is the process of verifying the claimed identity. Without the authorization on the access card, remember that you cannot enter into the premises even though you prove your identity. Okay, if your access card is expired or it's not working, then you need to go to the security team, provide your identity proof, and then get your access enabled. Same thing over here as well, to confirm that the user or the entity is who they claim to be. That's to prove that there is a password or a MFA. So in Amazon, when you're entering as a root user, it will ask you for both entering a password as well as providing some kind of a third, another method of authentication, which is multi-factor authentication. Either some devices takes fingerprint, some devices would be asking you for voice recognition, something like that. So in that same way, you will have something called your Google Authenticator is also one of the MFA. So it is mandatory that you should have at least one MFA set as another method of authenticating, and you should do both the authentication when you're entering into your account. So it's not only one you do at a time. You should do both. You have to enter the password as well as one of the MFA which you've enabled. So for our accounts, we would use the free MFA, which is your Google Authenticator. In terms of role, this is a process of granting or denying permissions to resources based on identity. So which means that I can allow or deny people, but normally it's deny all in every situation. So which means by default, everything is denied. So I can only open up certain items which is really required for you. So which means that I can grant permissions to the resources based on the identity. Okay, to determine what user actions or the resources that the authenticated user is allowed to access. Now, example is that granting access to an S3 bucket, allowing read-only access to a file, or restricting access to certain features is sort of an example over here, which you can assign as part of the user. Now, all we've been using so far with IAM is a root user, which means by default, you have all kind of access. But going forward, you can actually create users, which is meaningful users. And these users can be part of a role which is meaningful for them, for that user to accomplish. So this is the two things you need to understand before you proceed further. All right. Thank you guys again. I think we have come to the conclusion of this program, this particular video. I'll see you on the next one.